Alright, let's get into it, because this isn't just about economics, trade numbers, or some flashy headline. This is about a shift in the very DNA of global power. People talk about China like it's this unstoppable giant, a machine that can't be slowed down. But history doesn't move in straight lines. Giants fall, empires stumble, and quiet, determined players rise without most of the world even noticing, until they're already at the top. India is not just catching up to China, it's set to overtake it. Not in decades, but in our lifetime, and if you're still underestimating that, you're already behind the curve. You see, power isn't just about who makes more money or who builds more skyscrapers. It's about adaptability, resilience, and the ability to play the long game. And this is where India thrives. China's rise was fueled by a model of high-speed manufacturing, low-cost labor, and aggressive export strategies, but that model is peaking, costs are rising, labor is no longer cheap. The global market is diversifying, and the geopolitical environment is shifting against Beijing. India, on the other hand, is coming from a different place. It's not trying to be the factory of the world in the same way. It's building an economy around innovation, technology, and service, which are far more sustainable in the future economy than simply mass producing goods. Look at the demographic picture. China is aging faster than people realize. Decades of the one-child policy have created a population crisis. The average age is rising, the workforce is shrinking, and social welfare costs are ballooning. India, it's the youngest major nation on Earth, with over 65% of its population under the age of 35. That's an energy, a hunger, a workforce that can outthink, outwork, and outlast almost anyone. And in the economy of tomorrow, it's not the biggest army or the largest factory that wins. It's the country with the most dynamic human capital, the minds and hands ready to shape the future. Then there's the question of risk. China's economy is tightly controlled, heavily dependent on the decisions of a small group at the top, and vulnerable to sudden policy shifts that can wipe out billions overnight. We've seen it in the tech crackdown, in the real estate collapse, in the unpredictable lockdowns. Investors are noticing. India, while not without bureaucracy and challenges, offers something that's increasingly relative openness, legal frameworks, and a democracy where business leaders can breathe without fearing their next statement could end their career. That makes capital feel safer, and when global capital starts moving in your direction, your climb accelerates. We also can't ignore the geopolitical playing field. China's aggressive posture in the South China Sea, its clashes with the West, and its tightening grip on its neighbors are pushing other countries to counterbalance its influence. And in that balancing act, India is emerging as the natural partner. The US, Japan, Australia, Europe, they all see in India not just a market, but a strategic ally. Trade agreements are being signed, military collaborations are expanding, and technology partnerships are being forged. The more China pushes, the more the world pulls India closer. Culturally, too, India has an advantage that's underestimated. Soft power matters. China's global image is often tied to suspicion, control, and censorship. India's image, despite its flaws, is one of diversity, democracy, and openness. Bollywood movies, Indian cuisine, yoga, tech entrepreneurs. These are cultural exports that warm people to the country, that make partnerships feel more natural. You can't buy that kind of influence overnight. It's built over decades, and India's been laying those bricks quietly. Now let's talk technology. The future isn't going to be won by who makes the cheapest gadgets. It's going to be won by who controls the platforms, the data, the AI, the quantum computing breakthroughs, the green tech revolutions. India's tech sector is already a force exporting IT services to the entire world, building startups that scale globally, producing engineers and developers at a rate unmatched by any other nation. And here's the secret weapon. Indians don't just create for India, they create for the world. That global mindset makes their innovations scale faster and integrate more easily with international markets. China has built a powerful system, but it's also a brittle one. When you're so centralized, you're only as strong as the decisions at the top. One bad call, one overreach, and the ripple effects can be catastrophic. India's messier system, yes, it's slower at times, actually makes it more adaptable. There's no single point of failure. States innovate differently, industries experiment independently, and entrepreneurs can pivot without waiting for a green light from a distant central authority. That chaos, it's actually a shield against collapse. Energy independence is another big factor. China is heavily dependent on importing energy, especially oil and gas, making it vulnerable to supply disruptions and price shocks. India, while also importing energy, is aggressively diversifying, investing in renewables, building nuclear capacity, and forming strategic energy partnerships. The push toward green energy not only reduces vulnerability, but positions India as a leader in the climate-conscious economy of the future. The countries that can power themselves sustainably will hold the keys to the next era of growth. Let's talk about trust. Global supply chains learned a hard lesson during the pandemic and in the years since. Dependence on a single source is dangerous. China plus one has become the mantra of multinational companies, meaning they're looking for another major hub besides China to base operations. Guess who's at the top of that list? India. Not just because of costs, but because of a growing reputation for stability and reliability in critical sectors like pharmaceuticals, technology, and advanced manufacturing. Even militarily, India is no longer the silent observer. It's modernizing rapidly, building indigenous defense technology, and strengthening strategic partnerships. It's not about matching China tank for tank or ship for ship. It's about ensuring that India has the capabilities to defend its interests and project power in its region. And as history shows, economic power and military credibility go hand in hand. One fuels the other. But here's what people forget. China's growth story was fueled by imitation and scale. India's rise is fueled by innovation and adaptability. Copying can get you far, but it's innovation that keeps you at the top. And innovation thrives in environments that tolerate risk, encourage diversity of thought, and allow open debate. That's India's edge. The freedom to think differently without fear of sudden suppression. I've spent time with entrepreneurs, students, and leaders in India, and there's something I see in their eyes, a mix of ambition and patience. They're not rushing to beat China tomorrow. They're building layer by layer, foundation by foundation. They know that when the moment comes, they won't just catch up. They'll pass by and keep going. China may have had a head start, but India is running a marathon, not a sprint. And finally, there's the element no analyst can fully measure: spirit. You can have the best strategy, the strongest numbers, but without the will to keep moving forward in the face of setbacks, you fall. India has had centuries of challenges, colonization, partition, poverty, and yet here it stands, still moving, still building, still dreaming bigger. That resilience is not something you can teach a nation overnight. It's forged in the fire of history, and it's what will carry India into the position of a true global leader. So while the world keeps its eyes fixed on the so-called competition between the U.S. and China, remember that there's another story unfolding. One where the quiet challenger isn't so quiet anymore. One where the underdog doesn't just catch up, but redefines the game entirely. The question isn't whether India will overtake China. It's whether you'll be ready when it happens. Because it will happen. And when it does, the entire balance of power, economics, and influence in the world will shift. Not in favor of those who were the loudest, but in favor of those who were the smartest, the most adaptable, and the most patient. Now, if you still think this is a fantasy, take a look at the numbers, the demographics, the trade flows, the investment trends, the alliances being built. They all point in one direction. The baton is already being passed. It just hasn't made the headlines yet. But it will, and when that headline comes, it won't be the start of India's rise. It will be the confirmation of something that's been in motion for decades. That's the reality. That's the future. And it's closer than you think. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine, backed by innovation. Military modernization will secure India's regional leadership and global relevance because for decades India's military posture was largely defensive, shaped by the trauma of past conflicts, the challenges of nation building, and the need to prioritize development over projection of power. But the geopolitical reality of the 21st century has made it impossible to remain purely reactive. The environment surrounding India has shifted dramatically. China's aggressive expansion in the Indo-Pacific, Pakistan's persistent provocations, new forms of hybrid warfare, and the race for technological dominance in defense have forced India to redefine what security means. It's no longer about simply protecting borders. It's about shaping the strategic environment so that threats never have the chance to materialize. This is the foundation of an assertive doctrine, one that doesn't wait to respond, but actively positions the country to deter, dissuade, and, if necessary, neutralize any adversary before they can act. Modernization is not just about buying new weapons. It's about integrating technology, doctrine, and strategy in a way that multiplies capability. India's approach has been deliberate. Instead of just importing defense hardware, it is building a robust domestic defense manufacturing ecosystem. Initiatives like Make in India for defense are encouraging partnerships between global defense giants and Indian companies, transferring critical technology and building local expertise. Indigenous projects like the Tejas fighter jet, Arjun main battle tank, and Akash missile system are no longer isolated experiments. They are part of a larger vision to make India self-reliant in defense. The move toward indigenization reduces dependency on foreign suppliers, ensures security of supply chains, and allows for rapid customization of systems to meet specific strategic needs in the air. India is steadily shifting toward a multi-layered air defense and power projection capability. The acquisition of advanced aircraft like the Rafale, coupled with upgrades to existing fleets of Sukhoi and Mirages, ensures that India's Air Force maintains technological parity or superiority against regional rivals. More importantly, India is integrating drones, unmanned combat aerial vehicles, and AI-driven surveillance into its air operations, expanding reach and reducing the risk to pilots. Programs like the Gatak UCAV signal that India is not content with playing catch-up. It's investing in systems that will shape the future of aerial warfare, where autonomy, stealth, and networked operations dominate on the seas. India's Navy has evolved from a coastal defense force to a blue water navy capable of operating far beyond its shores. Aircraft carriers like the INS Vikramaditya and the indigenously built INS Vikrant symbolize this transformation, supported by nuclear-powered submarines such as INS Arihant that ensure a credible sea-based nuclear deterrent. India's maritime doctrine now emphasizes securing the Indian Ocean region, protecting vital sea lanes, and projecting power into areas that were once considered beyond reach. This maritime dominance is crucial because 90% of global trade moves by sea, and controlling choke points in the Indian Ocean gives India leverage not just over regional players, but over global supply chains on land. Modernization is visible in the restructuring of the army into agile, integrated battle groups capable of rapid deployment. The days of slow mobilization are over. Modern conflicts demand speed and flexibility. India is investing in advanced artillery, precision, guided munitions, night fighting capabilities, and networked battlefield management systems. The emphasis is on mobility, communication, and situational awareness, allowing commanders to make informed decisions in real time. Border infrastructure is also being upgraded at an unprecedented pace, with all, whether roads, bridges, and forward airstrips, ensuring that troops and equipment can be moved swiftly to any flashpoint. But perhaps the most significant transformation is happening in the invisible domain: cyber, space, and electronic warfare. The wars of the future will be fought as much in data centers and satellites as on physical battlefields. India's creation of the Defense Cyber Agency, Defense Space Agency, and Defense Special Forces Division shows that it understands this reality. The country is investing in offensive and defensive cyber capabilities, secure communication networks, and anti-satellite weapons to protect its assets in orbit. By integrating these capabilities with traditional military forces, India is building a layered defense that is resilient against both conventional and unconventional threats. The modernization drive is not occurring in isolation. It is tied to a shift in strategic thinking. India's assertive doctrine recognizes that power is as much about perception as it is about capability. By demonstrating the will and the ability to act decisively, India changes the calculations of potential adversaries. Military exercises with partners like the United States, France, Japan, and Australia are not just about training. They are about signaling alliances and building interoperability so that India is never isolated in a crisis. The expansion of defense diplomacy, where India provides training, equipment, and humanitarian assistance to smaller nations, strengthens its role as a security provider in the region. Earning goodwill and strategic influence, the innovation driving this modernization is rooted in India's unique strengths. A vast pool of engineers, scientists, and technologists is being harnessed through institutions like the Defense Research and Development Organization (DRDO) and collaborations with private industry. Startups are entering the defense sector, developing niche technologies like AI-based threat detection, autonomous underwater vehicles, and advanced materials for armor and stealth. This decentralized innovation ecosystem allows for rapid prototyping, field testing, and iteration, far faster than the traditional state-run procurement cycle alone could achieve. Energy security also ties directly into military modernization. Modern militaries are energy-intensive, and India is ensuring that its fuel and power requirements in conflict scenarios are met without reliance on vulnerable foreign supply chains. Efforts to integrate renewable energy into bases, adopt energy-efficient platforms, and secure strategic petroleum reserves mean that the military can operate independently even during prolonged disruptions. This logistical resilience is as important as any missile or tank. When it comes to sustaining operations, the public's role in supporting this shift cannot be ignored. There is a growing national consensus that India must not only defend itself, but also shape the security environment in its neighborhood. This has fueled political will, increased defense budgets, and reduced bureaucratic resistance to bold reforms. The armed forces are receiving greater respect and resources, enabling long-term planning instead of crisis-driven procurement. Media coverage of indigenous defense successes and public engagement through events like Def Expo are building pride and awareness, turning military modernization into a shared national project strategically. India is also positioning itself as a balancing power in the Indo-Pacific. Its partnerships in the Quad, trilateral dialogues, and defense agreements with ASEAN nations are part of a wider vision to prevent any single power from dominating the region. This vision is not anti-anyone. It is pro-stability, pro-freedom of navigation, and pro-multipolarity. By aligning military capability with diplomatic outreach, India ensures that its rise as a military power is seen as a benefit to the region rather than a threat, making cooperation easier and confrontation less likely. Finally, the psychological shift within the armed forces themselves is profound. For years, operational thinking was constrained by the idea that India should only respond when attacked. Today, there is a willingness to take calculated, proactive measures to secure strategic advantages. This is evident in the surgical strikes, the Balakot airstrike, the rapid mobilization during border stand-offs, and the readiness to match escalation with escalation when necessary. This mindset, backed by modern capability, changes the entire equation for adversaries. They can no longer assume that India will hesitate or that political considerations will prevent decisive action. The journey is far from complete, and challenges remain, from budgetary constraints to the complexity of integrating new technologies with legacy systems, but the trajectory is clear. India's military modernization is not a reaction to a single event. It is the foundation of a long-term strategy to secure its place as the primary regional power and an influential global player. It is a statement that India will not be a passive observer of history, but an active shaper of it, and that its security, sovereignty, and strategic interests will be defended not just with resolve, but with the most advanced tools of modern warfare.